thumbnail.
Okay.
Okay. Hello internet friends, welcome back to my channel. My name is Temi, and if you're new here, I make videos all about my life. Today, I actually have my friend Emily on the channel. I'm staying with her in Boston, so I'm coming from the US of A, and we're going to do PhD tags. So I think we're like creating a PhD tag.
Yes.
So if you're a PhD student or a grad student and you want to do the tag, then the questions will be down below. But yeah, Emily's going to interview me today. So I'll let you introduce yourself really quickly.
I'm very excited. Hi everyone, my name is Emily Toman and I'm a social policy PhD student in Boston, and I'm studying Asian American identity formation and critical solidarities very broadly. And I'm really excited to be here with Temi today and yeah, just get to know a little bit more because I think she's incredible, and yeah. We're starting very early. And I think that her research is also really interesting, very important, and so I think this will be valuable for everyone.
I hope so.
Yes. So with that said, let's get into it. So can you talk to us a little bit more about your field, the area that your PhD is in, and just kind of what you're researching?
Okay, so my field is very inter-trans multidisciplinary. So I'm in the Department of Digital Humanities at King's College London, which I think is like one of the oldest digital humanities departments in the world. Don't cite me on that. But I would say my field is the field of internet studies. Some people call it critical internet studies, some people call it information science, some people call it library information science. I think particularly in the US, that's like the broader field.
Yeah.
And my research particularly is interested in looking and understanding how Black women engage with social media, how they make use of social media, how social media's affordances. So that means like things like how we have like friends lists and how you can tweet and share, these are what we call affordances, change our experiences with social media because of our race and our gender. And I'm very much interested in it from a position or from the perspective of a Black feminist reading of these, I guess, or engaging with it with a Black feminist theoretical framework.
Yeah.
And I'm also very much interested in looking at everyday moments of joy rather than looking at it from a lens of activism or resistance, which is what a lot of the field has looked at when looking at those like marginalized demographics.
Yeah, and you mentioned two phrases. So you said interdisciplinary and transdisciplinary. How do you distinguish those two things?
So, wow, putting me on the spot. So for me, interdisciplinary is basically taking, I guess how I think it is taking like different disciplines and like putting them together to try and like make a new conceptualization of something. Yeah. And transdisciplinary, I actually don't know the correct definition of that. I think transdisciplinary is when you have like disciplines that go across disciplines and work together. And I know multidisciplinary is when you bring multiple different disciplines together.
No, it's, that sounds...
That was not
already. Sorry. I just genuinely curious because I know. Let's do it. Okay. Yeah, it sounds really interesting, and that's actually obviously relevant to how we met on the internet. It is. It's.
I mean, I study Black women on the internet.
Obviously, I'm not a Black woman, so.
Are you not? Oh my God, you liar.
It's awkward.
I said this before in a few other videos, like I study Black women on the internet because I am a Black woman on the internet, but that's not like my positionality statement, but it does encompass part of my positionality statement.
Awesome. Well, kind of going along with that, why did you decide to kind of do a PhD, and specifically thinking about timing and why now?
Like why now?
Yeah.
I decided to do a PhD because I was working in the tech policy field, and I still work in the tech policy field. And I was living in Germany and working in Germany at the time, and I was like, everyone has a master's and a PhD, and I actually didn't have my master's then.
Yeah.
And I felt like I was a bit late to have my master's because at that time I was like 30. And I was like noticing that, and I was like, I think this is holding me back from continuing up in the tech policy field as like a senior person in the field. And so I was kind of like, I can do that. Yeah. So I applied to a public policy school in Germany, and I got in a full scholarship. And then some things happened, and Rona came, and I ended up doing my master's in the UK. And then I was kind of like, should I do a PhD? And kind of the reason why I was like, I think I want to do a PhD is partly because there were a lot of people in my field. There was a lot of white men in my field, and less so white women in my field.
A very common theme.
Who are talking about these issues of like race and gender, but they do not have the lived experience, and they aren't a racialized person. So there's always that tension as well. And so I was kind of like, and then also, as I mentioned before, the perspectives or like the digital lives of Black women, which is a slight misrepresentation of a book by Dr. Francesca Sabande rather, called The Digital Lives of Black British Women, but in general, the digital lives of Black women was being conceptualized as sort of only this sort of like activism and resistance and pain and algorithmic oppression and injustice and all those things which exist. But I was like, where is the joy and like the kikiing online that I see and the way that we have community and like hashtag #UOKasis and all these other things? I'm like, I wanted to study that, and I'm very much interested in digital, I guess, behaviors, particularly from Black women, because I am. And then also because in the tech policy field that I was working in, I'm working with very senior policy officials at the European level, and also civil society. I just found that there was this massive gap where there wasn't a real understanding of what it means to suffer or to be targeted and experimented on with things like facial recognition technologies, because no one in those rooms actually had that experience or had that fear. And so tech policy campaigning and advocacy work was effectively starting to become or focus on issues of concern from like middle-class white people rather than the people who were, you know, pretty much on the margins. And so all of that combined to be like, yeah, I can do that. I want to do that. It was very much a passion project in terms of like, I knew what I was coming into because I was like, very much into the field. And why now? I came into it around my 30s because I was kind of like, I've done a few different things in my career and I really want to focus on something, and I feel like I have enough experience and I'm not like afraid to come out of the workforce and like not have that time building up my CV and stuff. And then it just sort of like worked out with the timing and getting funding and everything.
Cool. That sounds awesome.
Not gonna be like, wow.
But no, I think, I think that everything you're saying is just, it's really interesting for me to kind of hear this from different folks and to hear it from you especially. And I definitely would identify with and kind of just, my brain's not working, but I relate to. But I think your point of kind of like working within in an industry field and observing like a very real, not only kind of theoretical gap, but also just who is doing a lot of the kind of the theorizing, who's really creating a lot of the systems, the technology, and just being like, that's not, being like, I can do that. I have good shit to say. And we were saying earlier, let me stop rambling. I'm censoring myself.
My interview?
I'm censoring myself. So then take us back to kind of your application process. What was it like? How did it go for you? I know we've talked about this a little bit.
So you and I talked about how we are like, T's are crossed, I's are dotted, like shit is together. Personally, as a Nigerian woman raised by a Nigerian mom, I do not know how to be any other way. Truly, I don't get it.
Yeah.
So I was like, okay, I'm gonna apply. And I say this, and I like knew I had to come correct, I had to be organized, I had to reach out to people. I'm very comfortable sliding people's DMs and being like, hey, I read this about you, or like, I'd love to have a chat or 5 minutes for this reason. So actually,
which is a good skill to have.
18 months before I was even
18 months
started my master's program.
Okay, she was really prepared.
I started to interview PhD students and talk to them about what I was interested in.
Yeah.
And honestly, this was easier for me because I was already in the field. So I was like, hey, I'm interested in critical interest studies. I'm thinking about this. Like, what do you think about it? Just sort of to get an idea of what they would say like their experience was like. And then when it actually came to applying, first thing I did was like reach out to some of my current lecturers and be like, I'm thinking of applying to this program. Would you be interested in writing a reference so like they knew what I was like wanting to do. And then I already knew about some of the top schools that I was interested in applying to, so like Oxford Internet Institute, KCL where I am now, Cardiff University, School of Journalism, Media and Culture. I did my master's. So I basically got a spreadsheet, put them all down, looked
Love a
at
good spreadsheet.
in New Zealand, and then in the UK you have to decide on a supervisor. So you have to like reach out to a supervisor. You have to basically send a little pitch email, be like, hi, I'm this person, I'm interested in this, I know your research is this, would like to be like, I'm interested in like applying for PhD. So I did that, had a spreadsheet with professor, school, research area related to my research, like accepting PhD students. So got all the information basically, did the same thing with like funding, like what you needed. And I had to be like this because at the time I was doing my master's full time and I was also working full time. So it's the ghetto.
Yeah.
And so the process was quite literally hell. I was also suffering from loneliness, from being in a new city by myself in pandemic season 2. And
you had lockdowns because
we had
the
lockdowns.
US is
we had like
terrible
3
country.
lockdowns in the UK. And as I said, I was working full time and doing my master's full time. So I was generally doing like 70, 80 hours a week. And when I was applying and writing my application, like literally you have to write a research proposal for the UK. So you literally have to propose an idea, particularly if you're in the social sciences or the humanities, you have to propose an idea. So it's like introduction, methodology, research questions, did all of that. I did have a good team of people. So people who I knew from my work, people I reached out to, primarily women of color, pretty much Black and Indian women exclusively, who were current PhD students or lecturers who I sent like revision, like versions of my application to, and including my current master's supervisor and getting feedback. So I actually felt like I knew exactly kind of what was going on, even though I was like, never done this before. So yeah, the process was hell and I will never do it again.
That's that's very good. That's a very good, everything you described, those are a very good example of how to do it in a very, I don't want to say successful because I can't, it's impossible to predict, but I think that.
But I was successful.
But she was successful and not like fully, like I think that,
I was successful. I applied to 1, 2, 3, 4. I applied, everywhere I applied to, I got in. And I got into one of the funding programs I applied to, but not one of the other ones. So I was very successful. And I don't know if like my approach predetermined that, but I was very, what's the word? Methodological. It was a systematic approach.
Methodological? Methodical,
systematic approach to how I was doing it. And I think just having all of that just like meant that I knew exactly when things were due and everything.
Yeah, which is really important. Great. Thank you for sharing your wisdom with us.
You're very welcome. I'll send you an invoice.
So, you know, you talked a little bit about the application process, and now that you're actually in your program, can you tell us a little bit more about what you've been doing throughout each year?
Not much.
Which is not true, but.
So I entered my PhD program like hours after submitting my 20,000 word dissertation, so I was tired. A girl was tired. I was so tired. So like the first 3 weeks, honestly, I told my supervisor, I was like, I have not a brain cell left, leave me alone. And she was like, all right, bet. So I was like, sweet. So basically it was just kind of like thinking about what I wanted to do. I will say that what I actually applied with to like both the funding body and to my PhD program, the research proposal I submitted was different.
Okay.
After the time I submitted my dissertation, I was like, no, don't want to do that, which is very common. They know it, like they know it's gonna happen.
Yeah.
So honestly, the first 3 months, I just started to read some things in my field. I have monthly meetings with my supervisor, with like meeting schedule with you. I'm interested in this thing. This is what I need from you. You really have to manage your supervisor, which I don't think people kind of like expect. Like they're not gonna handhold. You need to be proactive in every sense of the word. So I would do things like do readings. I would send me literature reviews where she would give me feedback and like be like, explore this, explore this. And right now I'm actually working on a pilot study, which is going to inform my methodology. And actually I have research interviews tomorrow, which is wild because I'm only in like month 7 of my first year.
And she got her participants very quickly too.
And I was very quickly. The benefits of being a participant researcher when you are part of the community or demographic you're trying to research. So yeah, it's been a lot of reading, writing, thinking, applying to some conferences. Me and a couple friends applied to a conference. We submitted, accepted, which is the Association of Internet Researchers Conference, and we'll be doing that in October. Yeah,
cool.
Published something. Yeah.
She already has her. Oh wait, we're gonna get to that. I was gonna say, already has publication. Well, that's exciting. Yeah. And then,
yeah, honestly, I've been really enjoying it.
Good.
I've been really enjoying it.
Yeah, and that's ultimately what you want. That is a dream, not just trying to slug through it.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I mean, there are also times where I'm just like, it's noise.
That's true.
Yeah.
Ups and downs. But mostly, it sounds mostly
I'm just like, wow, I'm being paid by the UK government to like lean into my black feminist radicalism. So.
Yeah. Shit's cool.
Yeah.
Yeah. Okay, so now earlier you talked a little bit about how you were already kind of working in tech. But could you talk to us a little bit more about just how you kind of afford to do a PhD? I know you said you were working full-time while you did your master's.
Yeah.
So what are you still doing that? What are you doing now? And how do you manage that?
I can do that. So before I started my PhD, I was working full-time in digital rights, tech policy, civil society, so kind of like non-profit civil society work. I was quite senior in that field, so I was making a good salary. I was making around like, I want to say, I think it's like $75,000 a year, which is not the highest I've earned, but that's what I was doing. And then I was working 3 to 4 times a week. On that, I would like reduce sometimes when like the master's was kicking my ass. And when I was applying to the PhD, I was like, if I don't get the funding, I'm not going to do it. My program costs, I think, 5.8 thousand pounds per year as a UK home student, and then the stipend is something I think between 15 to 17,000 pounds a year if you're lucky enough. And honestly, it's like a lot of luck to get a stipend. And so I knew, because I was so burnt out from the year before, that I had no desire to work, honestly, even like anything like 20 hours a week consistently. I knew I'd be able to do some freelance stuff because of my experience, and because I knew I'd be able to pick up some work here and there, which I've been able to do, which brings in a couple £1,000 every couple months as I need it. But basically I live off my stipend, which is around like 17,000 pounds. And to do this, I had to move to a smaller, more affordable city, or apartment rather, and I had to drastically look at my outgoings, but it was a compromise that I was willing to make and do, because honestly, a PhD is a full-time job, but it is a knowledge worker job. But this is the first time I haven't like been working for like someone else in my life, honestly, since I was like 15.
Yeah.
Whilst like I worked when I was in my undergrad as well. So I feel like I have the most freedom over my time, which is wild as someone who literally had like a limited company, who was freelancing for years. Freelancing, it's very much feast or famine. You're always like hustling, always like trying to find more work. Basically what it feels like for me is like a PhD stipend becomes like universal basic income, where you're just able to sort of like breathe and know that like you have that, like your outgo, your like rent and like bills taken care of. So basically with my stipend, and then occasionally I do some freelancing stuff, is how I pay for my life. But I also try to live within my stipend, because a girl does not want to do extra work. I do not dream of labor.
Yeah, and I think it's really helpful for me to hear at least someone like you who's talking about this, because I have obviously people in my program who are focused, like only living on their stipend, but a lot of them are like in certain scenarios where they either have like a lot of generational wealth, and this is like not to, obviously like you don't have to air your kind of financial situation out to everyone. Yeah, I was gonna, but like a lot of students like are in these programs like not really talking about how they're affording like they're kind of like being a PhD student, and so I think like it's been really illuminating for me to talk to other people, and it's helpful to hear. You know, it's great if you're like partnered and you have like another income, but that's
another thing.
That's not me. So like,
I don't live with my partner. I live alone. So like that's a hidden like support, right? When your rent is half because you live with someone. I don't have a roommate because frankly I'm too old. And that was one thing that I was also like, you know what? I need to be able to feel comfortable in my space and like do it. I won't be living with randoms. So yeah, like I think I'm pretty frank about incomes and earnings because I think it helps people understand not only like where they're being underpaid, but all it does is help your employer or whomever if you're silent, because they obfuscate it, they make it seem like it's a secret, and that allows them to exploit people. Yeah, 100%.
So pivoting a little bit, but what are tell us your thoughts on academic publishing? Like, have you published, and just in general, how do you feel about publishing?
I think in general, my feelings about academia are like, I don't want to say necessary evil, but I feel very from it because I have an entire career. I have 2 entire careers before my PhD. I was a senior marketing person before for a number of years. I worked in advertising and digital strategy for like FMCG brands. And then after that, I worked in tech policy where I still work now. So I don't feel beholden to academia as like my only job options because a girl has been around for a little bit. So I do think that gives me some breathing space to know that like I have 2 other options I can fall back on. So I don't really feel some kind of a way, which means I'm able to have a distance from academia and just really just enjoy it. Doesn't mean that I'm like oblivious to the bullshit. It doesn't mean that I am just sort of like, oh, it's this amazing place where everything's so great. So it just means that I'm just kind of like, meh. So academic publishing, I get it. I think how I approach it, I have a citational practice, which means that I focus and I center Black women, women of color, because I understand the politics of citation. And so I will do what I can there to ensure that other people's knowledge is centered and also being lifted up. And it also means that I like, with my decisions about what I want to write about my field, honestly I feel very blessed in that like I will see CFPs or whatever and I'll be like, oh, that looks really interesting, I'm really excited to think about that. So I like it in that sense, that I feel like it feels like essay prompts. Oh wait, can you say what is a CFP? CFP is a call for proposals or call for papers, which is basically like what a journal or like a conference organizer will like suggest, and it'll be like a little like summary of like what they're looking for like researchers to submit to. And for me, they feel like essay prompts. Which I loved essay prompts. Like, which one I'm gonna respond to. I haven't published in academia that much. I've done a lot of public engagement publishing and like reports and stuff. But I did do a co-written essay in Feminist Media Studies Journal, which was published this March, which was really exciting and special. It's like a first year PhD student to already have something in like one of the foremost like journals in my field. And that, again, that's because of the community of Black women who are in my field in the UK who lift each other up and sort of like try to give opportunities, you know?
Yeah.
So yeah, I think it's corrupt, exploitative, wahala, just like ridiculous. But I don't really get some kind of way with it because I'm not like, oh, I want to be a professor.
And like necessary, like the publish or perish mindset.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah. So you kind of touched on this as well, but what are you hoping to do post-graduation? You said you're like, I'm not really here to, like, you mentioned think tank, so like tell us a little bit more about that.
So right now, as part of my like public engagement work, I work under the brand Lasse, which is a Black feminist internet lab, which does like media and research for joyful and technological internet futures.
Check it out if you haven't already.
You can really check it out. You can see on my website, and like we have a sort of like dead Instagram because Instagram content takes a lot of work. Basically, it's what I do a lot of my freelance work underneath, and I only like take on projects that align with that, sort of like what I'm trying to do there. But yeah, my ideal thing would be to do my PhD, do a very research focused fellowship or postdoc fellowship thing, and then to basically work on continue to develop a Lasse.
Cool. I'm excited to see where you're able to like
claim it, manifest it. I mean, I also want to write a book.
You will write a book.
I will write a book. So I mean, I don't know if it's gonna happen, but that's what I would like to happen, and I'll try and do whatever I can to sort of like
and if I know you, it will happen.
Okay, well, I really love that.
Watch this video when you
save this video for 5 years later.
Okay. So you study like you're in the realm of tech, digital studies,
digital humanities.
So what do you think of the academic PhD communities on Instagram and YouTube?
Okay, so when it was season 2 of Rona and I was by myself in my apartment, I was like, oh my god, people are like doing PhD stuff on Instagram. Pretty much Instagram I use as Google sometimes. Like sometimes I'll be searching like Black women in Berlin and like try and find things. So ultimately I was like, oh, Black women PhD, nothing. Please try again. So I was like, fine, PhD. Remove the black.
But
I gotta be black. And saw these accounts and I was like, oh, that's cute. And like I'm a digital native, not so much as these children who are literally coming out with like iPads attached to their hands, but like I was on Zanga and I had blogging, so like I feel very at home like looking for community on the internet. And so I was kind of hyped at first. So I was like, let me create one at Tammy's Research. And I was like, And then I very quickly fell off because I was working 2 jobs.
It's a lot.
But I still like followed some people. Honestly, I mean, I met you on Instagram and I'm so blessed and grateful that we did connect and we met.
And I feel very similarly.
I think you're brilliant, and I think like generally this is like the beginning of a beautiful friendship, or at least I hope it will be.
It will be. It is.
Heard it here first, folks.
And not just, I guess I should add, I appreciate that it's not just, I guess like friend, and I guess it depends on your definition of friendship and what you look for, but I appreciate that it also feels as though you're someone who is a friend and someone who can push my thinking as well as a scholar, like who I am as a scholar. And she's already like, she's advising me to not work. So I'm already like learning a lot. Just having you here, like I'm already learning a lot.
She stayed being like, oh, I should apply for this job. And I'm like,
yeah, but I also like don't actually apply to the job. So.
So then I'm like, maybe she doesn't because she doesn't know how to do it.
I know. Anyway, sorry, continue.
So how I feel about it now, as with most things, it's been commodified. And I think some people, I'm just gonna be frank, I think some people might have wanted to be an influencer or a content creator, but maybe felt like they weren't like a fashion babe or like a makeup babe or like a fitness babe, which is like arguably some of the biggest content buckets, or like lifestyle. And so it's sort of come to be like, you know, like quirky academia girl or like aspirational, like was it desk?
Oh yeah, like the studygram community.
Yeah, like desky.
Yeah.
Is that what it is? Like desk selfie. Truly?
That's a thing.
Yeah, it is. I don't know.
I've been seeing a lot of desk setups. I remember that was like
on the hashtag. Yeah, that was there, and you know, whatever. So I think that there can be community, but I have a very specific idea about like who I want to be in community with. And so my thoughts on like the prevalence of like the PhD studygram, the academic like Instagrammer, and like also shout out to Ijeoma, who was like one of the OG PhD folks on this here YouTube, like talking about her experience.
I think that's actually how I started following her. Was I Googled like how to apply to PhD programs?
Yeah, she
and
has
like
one of
her
those
video.
videos.
Yeah, her video popped up, and then I saw she had like I was like, whoa, I didn't know you could do all this.
Yeah, exactly.
And actually, also for me at least, shout out to Alante Black in grad school.
Yes.
I also, those two were like huge inspirations.
And also Raven.
Yeah.
From, was it Black Gold's grad school or something very similar. She has a blog, and she was onto one of the blogs that I read, and I was like, oh my god. And she has a very similar field to me. And I'm actually interviewing her for my research in a few days. So I feel as though the academic Instagram community has become commodified, has become, which I call like the academic Instagrammer to lifestyle influencer pipeline.
Yeah. And we're like productivity.
The productivity babes.
Yeah.
I don't know if they're okay. Some of it I'm like whatever, but some of it feels like as of course it does, that it is full of the same issues that we see in influencing, the racial pay gap. I do think there is actually a prevalence of women influencers over male academic or men.
Anecdotally observed.
Yeah, anecdotally have observed that. And so really, I have disengaged with a lot of the accounts that I first found and followed, because it just isn't people who I want to be in community with. Their content doesn't add anything to my feed, and I have over the years developed specific ways of thinking, particularly about my Instagram. Twitter is very much a platform for work for me. It's a networking tool. I can't really like, my boundaries on Twitter are a bit more flexible, but on Instagram I pretty much treat it as like digital diary, digital time capsule, place for me to put my thoughts and like do stupid faces on stories. And sometimes I'd be doing discourses, even though I tell myself that I'm not going to be doing discourse anymore, but sometimes it happens. So I don't feel ambivalent about it. I feel like same shit, different day about the Instagram academic community, but I do find it very interesting what is seen as like useful content. And all I will say about that is, if you're on Instagram searching how to do a curriculum vitae or a resume, or how to like literally how to search for a postdoc, Jesus take the wheel. It's above me now.
Yeah.
All on here on Beyonce's internet, and you're on Instagram searching how to set up yours.
Yeah.
It's
one of those things that like maybe you could, like, to your point, could DM someone and
no,
then
but
talk
honestly don't like,
but then you're asking them to do, and then you're asking them to do labor on your behalf, and like a lot of these questions can be found on Google, can be asked like through like existing kind of,
it's very different to DM someone to be like, who's very in the same area of your work, and be like, hey, I've been doing this or whatever, and I love your work, and I was wondering if we can maybe have a chat. I would definitely say that for the smaller, more nano creators, but like to literally just be like, oh, I find this content so helpful, when it's like, no. I just find it wild, the kind of content that apparently people are finding super helpful, that for me feels super basic, or for something that I would look honestly on like search on Google at first for. But something I have realized, I can't remember who said this, so like this attribution isn't to me, but common sense is not that common.
It's
so yeah,
on Instagram. That's that. Yes. Okay, finally.
Emily's like, oh no, done with it already.
No, my foot is falling asleep. But so have your expectations matched the reality of your PhD program?
In a word, yes.
Okay.
I thought I would have space.
Don't really know what that's for.
Sounds like a helicopter.
It is a helicopter. semester. But
Okay.
don't know if it's like news or something else.
Popo. Yeah, for me it definitely has. I thought that I would have time to read and absorb and think, and I have had a lot of time. I'm really enjoying doing that. I manage a community called Women of Color PhD Club, where we meet a couple times a week to do co-working. It's developed into a gorgeous little community of women of color, primarily Black women, who are working on their PhD, just talking about the trials and tribulations of doing a PhD, but also just like having fun and just like becoming friends. So I love that. I've met people like you. I'm very much a nerd. I like school. I like learning. My mom, rest in peace, she finished her PhD posthumously. And so in some ways it feels not full circle, but I feel kind of close to her in that I'm doing my PhD, and also very sad that I can't discuss this with her, especially because we don't have like a similar field, but she's a critical race theorist and looked at immigration, but Black feminist theories we both like looked at. So in some ways I feel very close to my mom, which makes me feel even like happier about my PhD, and deciding she had a PhD. It's also something that she kind of like I guess like not predicted, but like sort of like intimated that she didn't think I was quite finished with education right before she died, and I was kind of like, what you talking about, Willis? But here I am picking up the third degree, like a donut,
like she knew.
she knew, and she usually does. So yeah, I have to say it really has met my expectations. I'm really enjoying it, and I know that this is like really rare to say, particularly as someone who is the identity that I have. But I think one thing that does make me feel this way, or the biggest difference that I can feel from that, is that I came to my PhD later, and so I have a couple of careers behind me. I have a lot of experience, and so people can't really exploit me as easier if you're 22 and starting this thing. When I was 22 years old, I knew, and this isn't to seem like condescending, but like I didn't know anything about the working world. I didn't know how to advocate for myself. I didn't know how to manage up. I didn't know anything, because obviously you really don't. And now I do, and I've had to have very difficult conversations with really senior people, and all of that alongside my experience in like pretty much working in and around the field. Like I had worked
no, I know what I'm talking about. Like this isn't
but also like having worked with like some of the scholars already like in my field, because of my civil society work, just made me feel like I knew what I was looking to do. I knew where the gap was, and that makes me feel a bit more secure, I think. And also just like at the time that I decided to do my PhD, I was like, no, this is what I really want to do. And I'm not trying to like get a lecture job out of it. If I do, like people can change. Don't come for me if I'm like, oh, you saw your.
I also think you would be a great lecturer too.
Do you think? I don't know. So. I really don't enjoy teaching people.
That's fair, but I think you would be the way you communicate. Okay, I'll just say the way you communicate things is like very clear, and it without losing any sort of kind of I don't know, what am I trying to say? Like depth, like you're able to communicate things clearly and have it still kind of hit the same way that it.
Okay, so like it's not like it's clear and it's succinct, and it's concise, but it doesn't lose its like weight, or it's like.
Yes, exactly.
How funny it can be. That's a skill. Wow, not about that.
It is. It's a very. Thank
you so much for saying that. That's a really kind compliment. It's a really huge compliment. But yeah, I mean, I one time taught English as a second language to wealthy like Italian, French, and Spanish kids, and it was hell. And it was honestly one of the hardest jobs I've ever had. And I don't have any desire to be like a GTA, because the pay is and the work is but yeah, cool. In a word, it has met my expectations.
Nice. I'm glad you're having a good experience.
Me too. I hope it stays that way.
And thank you so much for blessing us with your wisdom and your words.
There was wisdom. But yeah, thank you for interviewing me.
Of course.
And if you liked that, then go over to Emily's channel and watch her video where I interview her. The link will be up there or down there or maybe both. And yeah, also as I said before, the questions for this PhD tag will be down below. So if you wanna go ahead and do it, please do. Please do. Tag us.
Yes.
Let's make this a thing. But yeah, thank you very much for listening. Please like and subscribe. It really helps me algorithmically. And please go ahead and watch Emily's and do the same thing there, because we're just two, nano creators.
Yes. But you did. She's blowing up any day now. She's blowing up any day
Not
now.
you saying I'm but yeah, thanks for watching, and I will see you in the next one.